Vance knew she had been abandoned the moment the airlock sealed. She stood alone inside the alien vessel, staring through the thick observation window as the last human shuttle shrank into a silver speck. "Come back," she whispered. The shuttle never turned. Her jaw tightened. Of course it didn't. The evacuation order had been simple: get off the planet. Leave everything else. Mara had been the xenobiologist assigned to study the Kharuun species. She had spent 6 months aboard their enormous carrier, learning their biology, behavior, and language. Then the Kharuun fleet had been attacked. The ship had taken catastrophic damage. The human expedition had decided the vessel was lost. Everyone evacuated. Everyone except Mara. She had been trapped in a damaged research chamber when the emergency doors malfunctioned. Now she was alone aboard a dying alien warship drifting beyond the moon. At least, she thought she was alone. A soft clicking sound came from behind her. Mara froze. Slowly, she turned. 4 pairs of enormous golden eyes stared at her from the darkness. The Kharuun cubs. They were barely larger than wolves, covered in dark silver fur and armored plates that ran along their backs. Their adult parents had been terrifying creatures, nearly 3 meters tall, powerful enough to tear through steel. The cubs were supposed to be harmless. Mara had learned otherwise. "Easy," she whispered. The smallest cub stepped forward. Its ears flattened. Mara raised both hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub sniffed the air. Then, unexpectedly, it walked straight toward her. Mara crouched. The creature pressed its forehead against her palm. She stopped breathing. "That's new." A second cub approached. Then a third. Within seconds, all 4 were surrounding her. Mara smiled despite herself. "You know your parents are going to kill me if they catch you doing this." A deep metallic groan shook the ship. The lights flickered. The cubs instantly became alert. Mara looked toward the corridor. Something heavy moved in the darkness. Not a cub. She slowly stood. The emergency lights turned red. A warning appeared on the alien display. Mara couldn't read most Kharuun symbols yet, but she recognized one. "Hunter." Her smile vanished. The cubs crowded around her legs. "No," Mara whispered. The largest cub growled toward the corridor. Then another growl answered from the darkness. Mara backed away. She had no weapon, no shuttle, no communication with Earth. And 4 alien babies were now hiding behind her as if she were the one who could protect them. The creature stepped into the red light. It was not Kharuun. It was something much worse. Mara's pulse hammered. The cubs lowered their heads. And for the first time, Mara realized something strange. They weren't afraid of the monster. They were afraid of what would happen to her. The smallest cub bared its tiny teeth. Then all 4 charged forward. Mara stared after them in disbelief. "Wait, don't." The ship suddenly shook violently. And somewhere deep inside the alien vessel, something enormous began to wake. Mara barely had time to react. The 4 cubs sprinted down the corridor, their claws striking the metal floor with sharp clicks. "Come back." She ran after them. The red emergency lights flashed across the walls as the alien ship groaned around her. Smoke drifted from damaged ventilation shafts. Somewhere beneath her feet, machinery screamed under the strain of the failing engines. Then came a roar. It wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was deep enough to vibrate through Mara's bones. She stopped. The cub stood 30 meters ahead of her, facing the creature. It emerged from the shadows on 6 powerful legs. Mara's mind struggled to understand what she was seeing. The animal was enormous, nearly twice the size of an adult Kharuun. Its body was covered in black armor-like scales, while pale blue veins pulsed beneath its skin. 4 narrow eyes burned beneath a ridged skull. A hunter, an apex predator native to the planet below. Mara had studied them from a safe distance. She knew exactly what they could do. "Cubs," she shouted. "Move." The largest cub turned its head. For one terrifying second, Mara expected it to run. Instead, it growled at her. Not at the monster. At her. Almost like a command. Mara blinked. "What?" The smallest cub suddenly ran back. It grabbed the edge of her damaged field jacket between its teeth and pulled. Mara looked down. "You want me to follow?" The cub pulled harder. The other 3 began circling the hunter. Mara finally understood. They weren't attacking. They were distracting it. That's insane. The hunter lunged. The cub scattered. Its claws slammed into the floor where they had been standing. Mara grabbed a broken metal pipe and ran. She reached the nearest cub just as the hunter spun toward it. Mara swung. The pipe struck the creature's armored shoulder. The impact did almost nothing. But it worked. The hunter turned toward her. Mara's blood went cold. Oh, that was stupid. The creature roared. Then it charged. Mara ran. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew the cubs were running beside her. A door appeared ahead. Mara slammed her palm against the alien control panel. Nothing happened. Come on. The hunter was getting closer. Mara struck the panel again. Suddenly, one of the cubs jumped onto the control surface. Its claws touched several glowing symbols. The door opened. Mara stared. You knew how to open it. The cub looked back at her. Then it barked. Mara dove inside. The cubs followed. The door slammed shut. A massive impact shook the chamber. The hunter struck from the other side. Mara backed away, breathing hard. The cubs surrounded her. Then something unexpected happened. The largest cub climbed onto Mara's lap. It pressed its head against her chest. Mara slowly placed a hand on its thigh. You're not leaving me, are you? The cub closed its eyes. Behind them, the alien control room suddenly came alive. Thousands of symbols illuminated across the walls. One message appeared in the center. Mara stared at it. She couldn't translate everything. But one word was unmistakable. A. Her eyes widened. Who is the A? The ship answered with a deep mechanical pulse. Then every door aboard the vessel locked simultaneously. Mara looked at the four cubs. The smallest one lifted its head. And somewhere far beyond the ship, something answered their call. The answer came as a vibration. It rolled through the ship in slow, powerful pulses, like the heartbeat of something impossibly large. Mara felt it through the floor. The cubs felt it too. All four suddenly stood. Their ears pointed toward the ceiling. What is that? Mara whispered. A holographic display appeared above the central console. Mara stepped closer. At first, the symbols were meaningless. Then her translation implant activated. The alien language slowly converted into human words. Mara's eyes widened. Royal. The display changed. A biological scan appeared. 4 glowing markers represented the cubs. A 5th marker appeared beside them. Mara. She stared at herself. Why am I registered? The ship didn't answer. Instead, another message appeared. Mara almost laughed. No, absolutely not. The largest cub growled. I don't care what your computer says. I'm not qualified to guard anybody. The cub walked toward her. Mara looked down. You're serious? It placed one paw against her leg. She sighed. Fine. Temporary guardian. The ship suddenly shook. A violent explosion echoed somewhere behind them. The hunter had breached the door. Mara spun around. Move. She grabbed the nearest cub and ran toward the opposite corridor. The others followed. Behind them came the sound of metal tearing. The hunter was inside. Mara knew they couldn't outrun it forever. She needed weapons. She needed a way to repair the ship. Most importantly, she needed to understand why these cubs mattered. They reached a massive chamber filled with transparent cylinders. Mara stopped. Inside each cylinder were bodies. Alien bodies. Warriors. Hundreds of them. Some were dead. Some were frozen. At the center of the chamber stood one enormous cylinder. Inside was a Kharuun female. She was larger than any creature Mara had ever seen. Armor covered her shoulders and chest. A crown-like structure surrounded her skull. Mara stepped closer. The translation system activated. Mara's heart stopped. The cubs rushed toward the cylinder. They began making soft, mournful sounds. Mara understood. Their mother. She looked at the frozen queen. If you're their mother. The holographic system appeared again. Mara touched the glass. Can I wake her? The ship displayed another message. No. Why? Mara frowned. The hunter. The display changed. No. A star map appeared. 3 enormous vessels were approaching the alien ship. Mara stared at them. Those weren't human ships. They weren't Kharuun either. The translation system finally identified their signal. Raider fleet. Mara felt the blood drain from her face. How many? The computer answered. 4 to 2 warships. The cubs growled. Mara looked at the frozen queen, then at the approaching fleet. She finally understood why the ship had locked itself. Why the cubs had refused to leave her. Their mother was dying. Their enemies were coming. And somehow, the ship had decided that a lone human scientist was the only person left capable of saving the Kharuun bloodline. Mara slowly picked up the broken metal pipe. She looked at the 4 cubs. Well, a distant explosion shook the chamber. Mara tightened her grip. Looks like we're defending your home. The largest cub gave a low growl. Then the queen's eyes opened inside the cylinder. Mara froze. Inside the transparent cylinder, Queen Arika's golden eyes stared directly at her. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the queen's gaze shifted. To the cubs. All 4 rushed toward the glass. A deep sound escaped Arika's throat. It was weak, barely audible. But the cubs answered immediately. Mara felt something tighten in her chest. She can hear you. The ship's computer flashed another warning. The queen's eyes closed again. Mara turned toward the console. Wake her up. The display responded. Manual override required. Way. A section of the floor illuminated. Mara knelt and pressed her hand against it. A sharp pulse ran through her arm. The console suddenly displayed a biological interface. Mara understood the problem. The ship required a genetic authorization. Kharuun royal DNA. We don't have that. The largest cub stepped forward. The console scanned it. Royal authorization accepted. Mara stared. You can operate the ship. The cub placed its paw against the glowing panel. The entire chamber came alive. Metal walls shifted. Hidden weapons unfolded. Energy conduits began glowing beneath the floor. The ship wasn't dying. It had been sleeping. And the cubs were waking it. Mara's mouth fell open. Your mother wasn't commanding this ship. She looked at the cub. You were. The answer came in the form of a massive mechanical roar. Outside the viewport, the approaching raider fleet had entered weapons range. Dozens of enemy ships spread across the darkness. Mara suddenly remembered something from her research. The Kharuun were not merely a warrior species. They were protectors. Their ships were designed to defend entire worlds. But this vessel had been damaged decades ago. It had never been fully activated. Until now, a warning appeared. Mara looked at the cubs. Stay behind me. The largest cub growled. No arguments. Another explosion rocked the ship. Something slammed into the outer hull. Then came another, and another. The raiders were boarding. Mara found an emergency weapons locker. Inside were 4 alien weapons. She picked up the smallest one. It was still heavier than anything she had ever carried. Okay, she whispered. The cubs gathered around her. The chamber doors opened. 3 armored raiders entered. They were tall, insect-like creatures carrying energy rifles. Mara raised her weapon. The raiders stopped. They had expected helpless survivors. Instead, they found a human woman standing in front of 4 royal Kharuun cubs. One raider spoke. Return the heirs. Mara's eyes narrowed. No. The raider tilted its head. You are human. I noticed. You have no authority. Mara glanced at the cubs, then at the enormous ship around them. Maybe not. The largest cub stepped beside her. The ship's lights turned bright blue. Every weapon system activated. Mara smiled, but apparently they disagree. The raiders raised their weapons. Mara raised hers. The ship fired first. A wave of blue energy blasted through the corridor. The raiders disappeared in a flash. Silence followed. Mara stared at the smoking doorway. Remind me never to make your ship angry. The cubs chirped softly. Then the entire vessel shook violently. Mara looked toward the main viewport. The enemy fleet had surrounded them. 42 warships. The ship's computer displayed one final warning. Mara swallowed. That's not very encouraging. The largest cub looked at her. Then it touched the command panel. A new message appeared. Mara frowned. What does that mean? The ship answered. Mara looked at the approaching fleet. Then at the cubs. She pressed yes. Across the alien warship, ancient systems awakened. And for the first time in centuries, the Kharuun flagship prepared for war. The moment Mara pressed yes, the entire ship changed. The gentle blue lights disappeared. Every corridor turned crimson. Armor plates slid across the walls, sealing vulnerable sections. Weapons unfolded from the ceiling. Somewhere deep inside the vessel, ancient engines began to roar. The cubs stood perfectly still. Then the largest one looked at Mara. A hologram appeared between them. Human combat protocol, adaptive command enabled. Mara frowned. Adaptive command. A tactical display appeared. The enemy fleet surrounded them. 42 ships, 3 heavy cruisers, 9 assault carriers, 30 smaller attack vessels. Mara studied the formation. They expect us to run. The ship confirmed it. Probability of survival, 3.7%. Mara almost laughed. That's terrible. The cubs made nervous clicking sounds. Mara crouched beside them. Listen to me. The 4 creatures looked up. We can't beat 42 ships by fighting them normally. The largest cub tilted its head. So we're going to cheat. Mara returned to the command console. Her scientific training had taught her something important about the Kharuun. They didn't build ships the way humans did. Their technology was partly biological. The vessel could sense its crew. It could adapt to instinct. And the cubs weren't ordinary crew. They were royal heirs. Mara placed her hand on the command interface. Show me everything the ship can do. The screen exploded with information. Mara's eyes widened. Cloaking, gravity manipulation, energy shields, drone swarms, dimensional displacement, and one weapon that made her stop breathing. Starbreaker cannon. She whispered, "You have got to be kidding me." The ship displayed the weapon's status. Charging, 2%. Mara stared. How long? A warning flashed. Enemy boarding wave approaching. Mara looked toward the corridor. Then we survived 23 minutes. The first blast struck the ship. The floor tilted violently. One cub fell. Mara caught it against her chest. I'm okay, she whispered. The cub pressed its face against her shoulder. Another impact shook the vessel. Metal screamed. The enemy had begun boarding. Mara grabbed her weapon. Stay close. The cubs followed. They entered the corridor just as armored raiders appeared. Mara fired. One fell. Another charged. Before Mara could react, the largest cub launched itself forward. It struck the raider with incredible force. The creature crashed against the wall. Mara stared. You're getting stronger. The cub growled proudly. More raiders appeared. Too many. Mara backed away. Then the smallest cub suddenly ran toward a wall panel. Its claws struck several symbols. The corridor doors opened. A wave of miniature Kharuun drones poured out. Hundreds of them. They swarmed the raiders. Mara stared in disbelief. You had those the whole time. The cub looked back. Mara shook her head. Remind me never to underestimate you. The ship trembled again. A new warning appeared. 68%. Then another message appeared. Mara's heart jumped. Human. She opened the channel. Static filled the command room. Then a familiar voice came through. Mara, this is Commander Hayes. We saw the raider fleet. Mara stared at the console. Where are you? A pause. We're coming back. Mara closed her eyes. For the first time since being abandoned, she felt hope. Then Hayes continued. But there's a problem. Mara opened her eyes. What? We aren't alone. The transmission cut out. The ship's sensors immediately detected 12 new vessels. Mara looked at the tactical display. Her blood ran cold. They were human ships, but they weren't coming to rescue her. Their weapons were already charging. The largest cub growled. Mara slowly lowered her weapon. Why would humanity attack us? The computer answered with a single message. Mara looked at the cubs, and suddenly, she realized the raiders had never been the real enemy. Mara couldn't move. 12 human warships had appeared on the tactical display. Their insignias were unmistakable. Earth Defense Command. The same organization that had evacuated her. The same organization that had left her behind. The cubs sensed her fear. They moved closer. Mara placed one hand on the largest cub's head. It's okay. But her voice wasn't convincing. A transmission opened. Commander Hayes appeared on the screen. His face looked exhausted. Mara. She stared at him. You came back. Yes. To rescue me. Hayes hesitated. That hesitation answered everything. Mara's expression hardened. It's the cubs. Hayes looked away. Mara, you don't understand what those creatures are. I know exactly what they are. No, you know their biology. You don't know their history. Mara glanced at the frozen queen. Then tell me. Hayes took a breath. The Kharuun royal bloodline possesses technology capable of controlling ancient planetary defense networks. Whoever controls those heirs could command entire systems. Mara looked at the 4 cubs. They are children. They are weapons. Her jaw tightened. They are not weapons. Hayes lowered his voice. If the raiders get them, millions could die. And if you get them. Silence. Mara understood. The human fleet wasn't here to save the cubs. They wanted to control them. The commander finally spoke. Open the ship. No. Mara, don't make this difficult. You abandoned me. We thought you were dead. You left me alive. Hayes had no answer. The largest cub stepped toward the command console. Its claws touched the surface. The ship reacted instantly. The tactical display changed. A new image appeared. Earth. Then dozens of planets. Then hundreds. Mara stared. The Kharuun had once protected them all. The cubs weren't conquerors. They were heirs to a civilization that had guarded entire star systems. And now both humanity and the raiders wanted their power. A warning flashed. Starbreaker cannon, 91%. Hayes saw the display. His expression changed. Mara, shut that weapon down. No, that cannon can destroy a fleet. I know. And if you fire it. Mara looked at the human ships. They'll stop. Hayes shook his head. You'll start a war. Mara looked at the cubs. They already did. The ship suddenly shook. A human cruiser fired. Its energy beam slammed into the Kharuun vessel. The shields held. Barely. Mara's eyes widened. They fired on us. Hazy's voice came through the speaker. Mara, surrender immediately. She closed the transmission. The cubs surrounded her. For a moment, she looked at them. Then she noticed something strange. The smallest cub was staring at Queen Erica's chamber. Its eyes were raised. Mara followed its gaze. The queen's body was moving. Her eyes opened again. This time, they were fully awake. The glass cylinder cracked. Mara stepped backward. Everyone move. The cylinder shattered. A massive Kharuun female crashed onto the floor. She rose slowly. Blood covered her armor. Her breathing was weak, but she was alive. The cubs rushed toward her. The queen looked at each one. Then she looked at Mara. Her golden eyes narrowed. Mara raised both hands. I'm the one who protected them. The queen stared for several seconds. Then she lowered her head. Not in attack. In recognition. Mara's eyes widened. The queen spoke in a voice that sounded like distant thunder. Human. Mara swallowed. Yes. The queen looked toward the human fleet. Then toward the raiders. Finally, she looked at her cubs. You kept my children alive. Mara nodded. I tried. The queen placed one massive hand against Mara's shoulder. You did more than try. Outside, the human fleet began charging its weapons again. The queen turned toward the viewport. Her expression changed. Ancient fury filled her eyes. Then let them come. The Starbreaker cannon reached 100%, and every ship in the system received the same message. The message echoed through every ship in the system. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then the human fleet opened fire. Dozens of energy weapons crossed the darkness. Queen Arak raised one hand. The Kharuun ship responded. A massive shield expanded around the vessel, catching every attack in a storm of blue-white light. Mara stared through the viewport. The ship wasn't merely defending itself. It was protecting them. The cubs stood beside their mother. For the first time, they looked fearless. Arak looked at Mara. Human, the weapon is yours. Mara blinked. Mine. You awakened it. I don't know how to fire something that can destroy a fleet. The queen's eyes softened. You do not need to destroy them. Mara looked at the tactical display. She understood. The Starbreaker wasn't simply a weapon. It could disable every hostile vessel, without killing its crew. Mara placed her hand on the command console. Target their engines. The ship confirmed. Non-lethal disablement selected. Mara smiled. Fire. The Starbreaker activated. There was no explosion. No violent flash. Just a silent wave of light spreading across the stars. Every human and raider vessel suddenly went dark. Weapons stopped charging. Engines shut down. The entire fleet became helpless. Mara exhaled. We did it. One of the cubs chirped. Mara laughed. No, you did it. A transmission appeared. Commander Hayes. His face was pale. Mara. She answered. Commander. You could have destroyed us. I could have. Why didn't you? Mara looked at the four cubs. because somebody should know the difference between power and cruelty. Hayes lowered his head. For once, he had nothing to say. The raider fleet surrendered minutes later. The human fleet followed. But Mara's story wasn't over. 3 days later, a rescue ship arrived. The captain offered her a seat. "You've earned a place on Earth." Mara looked at the Kharuun ship. Queen Arak stood near the landing platform. The 4 cubs were beside her. The smallest cub suddenly grabbed Mara's jacket. Mara smiled. "I'll visit." The cub pulled harder. "Hey!" Another cub grabbed her sleeve. Then another. Soon all 4 were holding on to her. Mara looked helplessly at the queen. Apparently, they disagree. Arak gave a deep, amused rumble. "They chose you." Mara looked at the shuttle, then back at the cubs. She realized something. Earth had abandoned her. The Kharuun had saved her. And 4 alien children had decided she belonged to them. Mara knelt and hugged them. "Okay." The cubs pressed against her. "I'll stay." The smallest one made a happy clicking sound. Years later, human historians would call that day the beginning of the Kharuun-human alliance. But the official records always left out one detail. They said the alliance began with a queen, a fleet, and 4 royal heirs. Mara knew better. It began with 4 frightened cubs who refused to let one human woman walk away. And whenever anyone asked Queen Arak why humanity had been given a second chance, she always gave the same answer. Because one human stayed when everyone else left. Mara never forgot those words. Neither did Earth. And neither did the 4 cubs who had once hidden behind her legs. They grew into warriors. Kings. Guardians of worlds. But whenever Mara returned from a mission, 4 enormous creatures still raced toward her like they were babies again. Because no matter how powerful they became, she was still their human. And they were still her family.